Hi there, it's that time again. Take Two with Jerry and Debbie on the EWTN Global Catholic Radio Network. I will begin the show by confessing I am really not much of a moviegoer. Although nowadays you can't miss, we're so saturated with media, you can't really avoid discussions about particular movies, new ones that are out, older ones, kind of the approach that Hollywood takes to movie making in general and how it treats our Catholic faith, how it presents our faith in the movies. So this is what we're going to talk about today, the best and the worst of movies. I'm Jerry Usher with Debbie Georgianni. How you doing, Deb?
Yeah, I'm doing well, Jerry. I have to tell you, I actually like going to the movies, but when I found out just recently how many calories are in the movie popcorn,
You just found that out?
I just found it out, and I was so sad because that's all part of it, going to the movies and kind of, zoning out a little bit and just being in that relaxing theater and enjoying that big screen and all the noise. And I think this is going to be a good topic today because maybe it'll give us a chance to look at movies just a little differently.
Well, we're going to be joined for the entire program by someone you very well may have heard on Catholic radio or seen on TV, Stephen Greydanus. His website is decentfilms.com, and I had the blessing of working with Stephen many, many times when I hosted Catholic Answers Live. I'm sure he's still a regular guest on that program. Stephen is the film critic for the National Catholic Register, owned and operated by EWTN, and he writes regularly for Crux and Catholic Digest. He co-hosts award-winning TV show Real Faith, R-E-E-L, Real Faith, for New Evangelization Television, and he's a longtime member of the Online Film Critics Society. He's also a candidate for the permanent diaconate in the Archdiocese of Newark and Religious Studies, and most important, he is married to his bride, Suzanne. They have 7 children. Stephen, it's good to be working with you again. Welcome to Take Two with Jerry and Debbie.
Jerry, thank you so much. It's good to be here.
For those of you who've heard Stephen on Catholic radio, you know that right now you have the opportunity for the next 52 minutes or so to call in and ask about any movie. Maybe there's a new movie your kids are saying, hey, Mommy, Daddy, we want to go see this, and you're just really not sure. Is it clean? Is it wholesome? What's the rating? And what do the ratings really mean about this movie? Or maybe you're a fan of an old movie and you want to ask Stephen's thoughts on that. The movie-making process. Again, we can talk about how Hollywood treats Catholicism in the movies and how that has really changed over the decades. 1-800-585-9396. 1-800-585-9396. The best and the worst of movies today on Take Two with Jerry and Debbie.
Yes, this is an exciting topic. And Stephen, I'm kind of stuck on something. I heard Jerry say the Archdiocese of New Jersey?
Yes, I am.
What
I've lived
part?
here for most of my life. I was married and became Catholic in Charlotte, North Carolina, where Suzanne and I lived for a few years. And then we moved to Philadelphia, and that's where I studied at St. Charles Borromeo and got my first seminary master's degree in religious studies.
Wow.
And then we came back home to New Jersey, and here we are.
What part of New Jersey?
Oh, northern New Jersey. So I'm in the Archdiocese of Newark. We're exit 1 Parkway. For those of you in this area, you know what that means.
Oh, yeah. Well, I'm from West Caldwell.
All right.
Yeah, very cool. Essex County. Yeah, that's nice. Well, congratulations on being in the diaconate. How exciting is that? I'm sure that is. You're just blessing your family with all of your studies and everything you're going through. I'm sure it's been a wonderful experience so far.
Well, it's been a great blessing for me, and my family has really sacrificed a lot for me to go out twice a week to the classes and on Saturdays for formation meetings. So this is now we're going into year 4 of the academic process, and so we are the class of 2016, and I'm looking forward to ordination and serving the church.
Wow, that is beautiful.
I'm kind of laughing silently here, Stephen, because with all the education you have already, not to make light of the diaconate formation, but you could teach some of these classes by now, and here you've got to go through.
The process is, there's a lot more to formation than just book learning.
Right.
But I let's just say that a lot of the stuff we're talking about in the classes is somewhat familiar. Yes.
All right, well, we got some calls coming in, but there are lines still open. We're talking about the best and the worst of movies, and any Hollywood movie ratings type related questions today. Any of the current movies that are coming out, what to anticipate for the summer. Stephen Greydanus is certainly really at the top of Catholic movie critics really anywhere, so you got a great opportunity right now on Take2 with Jerry and Debbie at 1-800-585-9396. Get on board before all of those phone lines are taken.
And Stephen, I want to ask you a couple questions because I was so excited that you were going to be on the show today, and I'm often curious as for us as Catholic Christians, we talk a lot about how we should celebrate our sacrament of marriage and go out on date nights, and so a date night may consist of dinner and a movie. Would you have any suggestions for Catholic Christian couples and families when we are discerning or even thinking about taking on a movie? What should we be looking for?
Well, it helps if you're a married couple, or if you're still dating. It helps if you're with someone who has similar taste in movies to yourself. I'm very lucky in that respect. Suzanne's taste in movies and mine overlap. I would say in excess of 90%. So it helps if both parties are a little bit flexible. If each is willing to take an interest in something that the other one really enjoys. In my work, writing about film, I don't see what I do, and I don't think that as Catholics, our approach to film is fundamentally different from the way that anybody else approaches film. Obviously, we have a moral perspective, and we have a perspective on the human person that informs everything that we do. But movies are art and entertainment, and art and entertainment is the same for everyone. So we want to look for something we're going to enjoy, and we want to look for something that is going to enrich our lives in some way, and something that is going to offer something positive. So there is a lot of negativity in our culture. There is a lot that is contrary to the way that we as Catholics perceive life and how we relate to other people, and we need to be aware of that. So it's a process of discernment that we all grow in over time, and I think that one of the best ways to grow in that is by discussion, by talking with other people, by trying to think Christianly about movies and about life. I do that in my writing. Flannery O'Connor once said, I write because I don't know what I think until I read what I say. And for me, writing film criticism is a way of thinking about it and trying to think about it in line with a worldview that's informed by Christian faith.
Well, there you go, folks. So we're going to get to break number 1 here on Take2 with Jerry and Debbie on the EWTN Global Catholic Radio Network. A lot more that Debbie and I have for Stephen Greydanus. But what about you? Have you been to, maybe you went to a movie you thought was going to be, okay to go to, and, the ratings said, hey, yeah, this is good for your kids, and you got the shock of your life? Or what about new movies? It's summertime. New movies come out all the time. So if there's one you have a question about, Stephen is on top of that for you. 1-800-585-9396.
The EWTN Book of the Month for July is Behold Your Mother. In this biblical and historical defense of the Marian doctrines, Tim Staples has assembled the most thorough and useful Marian apologetic you'll find anywhere. It's available through the EWTN Religious Catalog web store, EWTNRC.com, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Or call 1-800-854-6316.
Is the court not courting religious liberty? This Friday on EWTN Theology Roundtable, EWTN theologians Colin Donovan, Cindy Quayer, plus EWTN General Counsel John Manos talk about the recent United States Supreme Court decisions binding religious liberty. Which could impact you? Sit down at the table with me, Elena Rodriguez, and talk to our theologian. EWTN Theology Roundtable this Friday, 3 p.m. Eastern on EWTN Radio.
so glad you joined us, friends, on Take Two with Jerry and Debbie. And today we're talking about the movies. Going to the movies as Catholic Christians. What should we be looking for? What should we experience? What is our takeaway with the movies in Hollywood? Well, we've got expert and film critic Stephen Greydanus on with us this entire hour. So I encourage you, please call up. You can ask him anything. He's with us. He'll answer the calls. And while you're waiting to get on the air, you'll be able to listen live, so you won't miss a thing. The number to dial is 1-800-585-9396. That's 1-800-585-9396. Stephen, I want to just quickly, before we get to the calls, I just want to ask you, if people are more interested in your work and your ministry, how can we find you?
Well, 15 years ago, I created decentfilms.com, and just this year, we have implemented a major update in the site that makes it a lot more user-friendly. You can access Decent phone or your tablet as well as your home computer or laptop. There are a number of search tools on the site to try to help people connect with the kinds of movies that they're looking for. Right on the home page, you can see all the latest reviews and articles that I've written. In addition to reviewing new movies, I write articles about a variety of topics. For instance, just recently, the BBC came out with a list of the greatest American films according to critics that they polled. And what I did was I compared their list to some of the films that were chosen by the Vatican for the 1995 Vatican Film List, which has been a kind of reference point to my work. You can also go to the search page and filter movies by genre, by my overall recommendability, by age appropriateness. If you're looking for a movie you can watch with the kids, or you're looking for a movie that specifically has religious themes. All of that and more is available at the search page for Decent Films. And while I write for a variety of sources, for the National Catholic Register, for Crux, for Catholic Digest, Our Sunday Visitor, and others, I try to link everything that I do at decentfilms.com, so that's the place to go. And if something is exclusive somewhere else for 30 days or so, there will be a link to it there.
So, Stephen, did I hear you say correctly that there's an app for Decent Films?
It's not an app, but it's a response. The design is now responsive and mobile friendly. So
Okay.
if you go to decentfilms.com on your smartphone, it will look as good as it can look, and you will be able to read and access the reviews on your phone.
Very cool. How exciting is that?
It's really exciting, and it was a huge amount of work. It was the first time that I couldn't do the HTML front-end design myself. I had to turn to a friend who does that for a living and bring him into it. And I have another friend who supports me on the back end, who maintains the database and the content management system that allows me to upload the content. So I've been very blessed with good friends and good allies in this work.
Like you would have had time anyway. A wife, 7 kids, permanent diaconate training. You actually
15 years ago.
Yeah, I'm sure it was. Stephen Greydanus with us. Take Two with Jerry and Debbie. What do you think about movies? Is there a new one coming out you want kind of an instant sort of review of? It'll have to be short here on the air, or again, as always, I think the key thing is when kids want to go to movies, you're wondering, you don't really have time to be researching. You can go to decentfilms.com, and I'm sure you can get your answer there. But if you haven't had time to do that and the kids are bugging you to go to this or that movie, call and talk to Stephen right now, 1-800-585-9396. Any movie-related question for this entire program. We've got Mary in New Jersey, of all places, gets to start us off today on Take Two with Jerry and Debbie. So we're going to go to Mary right now. There we go. Hey, Mary, welcome to the program. How are you?
Hi, everyone. How are you?
Mary,
Good.
where in New Jersey are you?
I'm in Essex County.
Uh-huh.
I'm in Belleville.
Okay. So I'm in Bloomfield, so we're not too far apart.
There
And
you
Debbie's
go.
from West Caldwell, so I'll just take the rest of the show off. You three have a great conversation. Go ahead, Mary.
Favorite movie moment or favorite movie without a doubt, The Passion of the Christ.
Okay, well,
For so many reasons.
The Passion of the Christ is a very powerful film, and it spoke very powerfully to a lot of people, to Christians, to non-Christians. Obviously a very polarizing film. Some people had strong positive reactions, some strong negative reactions, but I have watched it a number of times. I've watched it a number of times on Good Friday, and I certainly understand why it has gotten, or it's been celebrated the way that it has.
It really resonated with me, my family. It helped me return back to the faith after a too long absence.
Oh, God
and
bless
I'm a
you.
catechist. I teach 7th and 8th grade, and I show parts of it every Palm Sunday. And it really makes an impact. And I've seen it. I've lost count about how many times I've seen it. And still, every time I watch it, it's always new.
All right.
Love
Did
it.
you,
Wow.
Mary, did you say you had a favorite scene in that movie?
Yes. Flashback. I think it's one of the first flashbacks we get to our Lord. He falls, and the Blessed Mother picks him up and is rocking him. And I think any mother, I mean, I always loved Our Lady, but I really relate to her because I have a young son, and I think any mother of a son especially can relate to that moment. We hate to see our children suffering. Imagine Our Lady seeing what her son was going through mentally and physically. It just, I break down every time I see it.
All right.
Mary, that's the same scenes for me as well. I feel the exact same way, and I talked to other friends who are moms, and they felt the same way. They all of a sudden connected with the Blessed Mother because of the way she was relating to her young son, and it's so beautiful. I think that's wonderful that you show snippets of it in your religious education classes. I'm just curious, how do the teens or preteens react to the clips?
Them have to leave the room. Some of them can't even look because I focus on the scenes that I feel highlight the story the most, and I let them watch, and I let it play all the way through the scourging at the pillar. We talk about chastity. We talk about how each suffering relates to a particular sin. Let them watch the entire scourging at the pillar. It's not easy, even for me, after all the times I've seen it, but I feel they need to see it. I've even had all our CIA adults come and witness it. Our priests approved me showing it to them, and everybody reacts a different way, but everybody reacts.
The Virgin Mary is played in the film by Maya Morgenstern, who is Jewish. She's not Christian, but this is not the first time that she has played a Jewish woman who is a lover of our Lord. She also played St. Edith Stein in a movie called The Seventh Chamber, and she played that role before she was cast as the mother of our Lord in the Passion of the Christ. In fact, Mel Gibson discovered her watching that film on St. Edith Stein, the Seventh Chamber, and you can tell that he watched the Seventh Chamber because he borrows once or twice from it. The two films have something of a related expressionist style, and in one scene in particular where we see Maya Morgenstern lie down and put her head on the pavement, and then the camera sinks below the cobblestones, and we see that Jesus is in a cell beneath her. That specific move was borrowed from the Seventh Chamber. There's a scene in which Edith Stein trips and falls. It's a much more violent scene, and then she falls against the pavement with her cheek against the ground, and then in exactly the same way, the camera sinks down and we go into a kind of a dream sequence where we see a symbolic representation of some of the things that she's studying with, and moves back up and finds her there again, for what it's worth.
Mary, thank you so much. Great to have our first call from New Jersey today on Take Two with Jerry and Debbie. We're talking about the best and worst of movies, and really from a Catholic perspective. So if you want to grab that open phone line and ask Stephen Greydanus, film critic at decentfilms.com, your question, it's 1-800-585-9396. Before we get to Andre in Bakersfield, Stephen, I know, at least I shouldn't say I know, I presume the Passion of the Christ was probably the biggest budget, film of its genre, maybe the highest grossing film of all. Where would you rank it, at least in the the sort of the passion type of movies that you've seen over the years?
I haven't specifically compared the budget of The Passion of the Christ to other biblical films. That would be an interesting exercise. I think that The Passion of the Christ, I would put The Christ probably in my top 10 Jesus films, but not necessarily in my top 5. I do have some reservations and concerns about it, and there are other films that I admire more. One thing I think that we as Catholics should be aware of is that while Mel Gibson did make the film in a true spirit of devotion, at a point in his life when he was really trying to serve our Lord, before some of the things that happened that have kind of his life has fallen apart. You can see in the film some evidence of some of the demons that he's struggling with. Clearly, he has a family history of anti-Semitism, and while there are definite signs in the film of sympathy for the Jewish characters, by and large, the movie can be divided up into the good Jewish characters who are Christians or proto-Christians, and then the bad Jewish characters who are not. And there's really no sympathy for those characters. I particularly find it striking that Pontius Pilate is given a rich inner psychological life. He struggles with the question of what is truth. He talks with his wife, whereas Caiaphas is given no motivations at all. He just opposes Jesus without any explanation, even though the Bible gives him an explanation very similar to Pilate's when Caiaphas says that it is better for one man to die and the people be saved. That's not put in the film. So these are some, and then there's also the issue of the violence. Now, the violence is extreme. It's extreme because our Lord suffered greatly, and his spiritual sufferings can't be captured on film. You can see the physical violence as a symbolic representation of his spiritual sufferings, but it is true that the beating that he gets in the scourging at the pillar, for instance, is a superhuman beating. No human could actually endure that. And what we see in the Shroud of Turin, if you believe in the Shroud of Turin, as I do, is someone who certainly was not beaten so severely as that. The Romans knew their job, and they were not to kill Jesus. They were to beat him, and then he was supposed to be set free before he was crucified. So the beating that he gets there is probably not factual, and that also, I think, is something to be aware of. Doesn't mean it's a bad film, but it's something to be aware of.
Wow, Stephen, you really do know these films inside and out. And I just have to ask you, you said you had a top 5 Jesus films. Can you share? Yeah, can you share that with us?
Well, when I say these things as a kind of a rule of thumb, I don't know if I can actually give you 5 films. But here, okay. let me see what I can do. I'll
How about like
some of the ones that I admire? Probably my all-around favorite Jesus film is an animated film. It's not hand-drawn or computer animation. It's stop-motion animation. It's called The Miracle Maker, and I have a review of it on Decent Films as well as an essay. I watch this film with my family every single year at Easter season. Part of it during Holy Week, and then on Good Friday, and then on Easter Saturday. It is absolutely not only the best Jesus film to watch as a family, but also the most critically well-informed. It offers a portrayal of Jesus that is theologically accurate, that's simple enough for children, but also sophisticated enough for theology students and Bible scholars. It has a wealth of biblical scholarship behind it. N.T. Wright was one of the contributors to it. Ralph Fiennes is the voice of Jesus, and it's just phenomenal. I can't recommend The Miracle Maker highly enough. I'm also a big fan of The Gospel According to St. Matthew by Pier Paolo Pasolini. He was an Italian filmmaker who was very inspired by Pope John the 23rd, who he met in Assisi. Or he went to Assisi to meet John the 23rd when that Pope went to Assisi to have a meeting with artists. And in response to John the 23rd's call for a dialogue with artists, Pasolini made this film, The Gospel According to Matthew. It's a very interesting film because he only uses the dialogue in Matthew's Gospels. He doesn't add anything else, not a word. So it's meant to function with the pictures showing the story that Matthew tells us without adding a single word. He filmed it with non-professional actors. He cast his own mother as the Blessed Virgin Mary. Some of the images are a little striking, and Jesus, who's played a young student, is very young. But I find it a very compelling film, The Gospel According to Matthew. I'm also a big fan of Jesus of Nazareth by Franco Zeffirelli, certainly the most Jesus movie ever made, even if it's not the best. It's got some fantastic stuff in it.
Okay, hold that thought, Stephen. We're going to take a quick break, and when we get back, we'll go to Andre, who's been waiting patiently. But we're going to take a quick break on Take2 with Jerry and Debbie. Stay with us. We're talking about movies.
This month, the EWTN home video highlight is Fields and Faith. Encounter athletes and sports figures of extraordinary skill and talent with Bob Dolan as they speak about their strong Catholic faith and the important role in their lives. Get your DVD set through the EWTN Religious Catalog web store, EWTNRC.com, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, or call 1-800-854-6316.
Hi, I'm Kathy Sinnott, and I'm host of EWTN's Celtic Connections. From our studios in Ireland, we take a Catholic look at the big stories breaking in Great Britain, in Ireland, and across Europe. Celtic Connections is the only Catholic news show made in the UK or Ireland. So join me every Saturday and Sunday on Celtic Connections.
For dates and times in your area, log on to EWTN.com.
Whether you're at home, at work, in the car, you can follow what he teaches 24 hours each day. We're EWTN Radio.
And just to let you know, I'm a returning Catholic because of EWTN. Bless you guys and keep it up.
And you're invited to visit our website too. Just log on to www.ewtn.com. That's www.ewtn.com.
Get an insider's look at the latest information from EWTN. Sign up for Wings, EWTN's weekly email newsletter. Get the latest information about live events, special features, and guests. Connect with EWTN on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. Just go to EWTN.com and click on the Wings link to sign up. Don't miss a minute of all that's happening at EWTN. Get your wings today.
Welcome back, friends, to Take2 with Debbie and Jerry. Did you notice that, Jerry?
I just did, yeah. We've retitled the program, and that's just fine with me.
That was just the first time I ever did. I just wanted to see if everyone was paying attention. Welcome back to Take2 with Jerry and Debbie. And we have Stephen Greydanus with us. He's a film critic and movie expert. And Stephen, and I apologize, we went to break, but you were just sharing the last film that was one of your favorites. Can you just say it one more time and just share a little bit? And then Andre, we're going right to Andre in Bakersfield, California.
Oh, well, we were talking about Jesus films, and I think I had just mentioned Jesus of Nazareth by Franco Zeffirelli. One other that occurs to me is Cecil B. DeMille's silent Jesus film, The King of Kings. This is not to be confused with the later 1960s film starring Jeffrey Hunter. Cecil B. DeMille's film is... it's a very interesting approach to the gospel materials with a very gentle and mild depiction of our Lord. It's got a very reverent approach to his mother, and it has a lot to commend it. I think it's a much better and more authentically religious film than his much better known religious epic, The Ten Commandments. When people think of Cecil B. DeMille, they think of Charlton Heston and The Ten Commandments, but you should really go back and check out The King of Kings, his silent masterpiece from 1926-27.
Very good. This is wonderful stuff. I'm taking so many notes, but we're going to, as promised, move on to Andre, who's waiting so patiently, listening on Sirius XM 130 in Bakersfield, California. Welcome, Andre, to Take2 with Jerry and Debbie. And I hear a little... Do you have your radio on?
I believe it is off here. Good morning, guys. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Just fine, Andre. How are you?
Oh, very good. Hey, Stephen, I love what you do. Great website, by the way. I know you guys recently updated it. It looks really cool.
Thank you so much.
Recently watched the movie Mad Max Fury Road.
Yes.
And, man, I thought it was just really, really strange and abstract and out there. And I saw it had some pretty decent reviews on your website. I wanted you to comment a little bit on what you like about that.
Mad Max Fury Road has really taken the world of film critics by storm because of the sheer intensity and the unusual approach to the action in the film. It is an action movie. It's sort of a sequel to the other, I don't know, 3, 4. How many Mad Max movies have there been? I think this might be the 4th. But they're really only, and of course all the other ones before this starred Mel Gibson. In fact, it was Mad Max that made Mel Gibson a star, and thus led to the Passion of the Christ. Now they have Tom Hardy in the role. And it's a movie that, in the first place, is just amazing on a technical level. And this is something that, as Catholics, we are called to appreciate. If you look at Vatican teaching documents on the arts, like Inter Mirifica and Communio et Progressio, they call out technical merits as something that Catholics should seek out. So when I see a brilliant, inspired orchestration of cinematography and actors and pieces of equipment in a set piece, that arouses my admiration. But it's also a movie that uses themes and tropes in some very provocative ways. For instance, one thing that you see a lot of in post-apocalyptic and other action movies is movies that are really centered on male characters and female characters are pushed off to the side. Here's a movie that's set in a world that seems to be very much like that. It's a movie that in some ways invites comparison to the world of Islamic radicalism, because it's a highly patriarchal world in which women are subjugated and even kept as sex slaves. You have a man who has 5 women that he keeps as a kind of a harem to try to reproduce the world. But they resist this. They fight back against it. They have a champion played by Charlize Theron who helps them to escape, and it's really their story. And so I think all of that is very interesting. There's a lot more going on in the film, in spite of the fact that there's comparatively little dialogue and comparatively little psychology. On the level of theme, it's a very rich movie that you could unpack for a long time. Also, obviously, an incredibly violent and intense and in many ways unpleasant film. It's certainly not a film for all tastes, but a movie with a lot of interesting things going on.
How's that, Andre? All right, Andre, thank you for the call. We appreciate that. Take Two with Jerry and Debbie on the EWTN Global Catholic Radio Network. We're talking about the best and worst of movies today. Related, Hollywood-related, ratings-related question. Maybe you've got a great old movie you want Stephen's thoughts on, or again, any of the new movies that come out just on a regular basis. 1-800-585-9396. 1-800-585-9396 is our number. Stephen, I'm curious what are your thoughts on how the movie critic profession, I guess I'm sure you can call it that, has changed over the years. And where I'm going with this is, I think maybe generations might have looked at religious films, Jesus films, Catholic films, maybe a little bit differently than they do today. I don't know. Are you sort of in a minority now of those who really want to uphold these movies and try to encourage people to see them?
I think that we as a culture are clearly becoming less religious. This was very clearly attested by Pope Paul VI in his encyclical on evangelization in the modern age. He called this separation of the gospel and the culture the defining drama of our times. So there was a point in the early and mid-20th century in which the gospel and the culture were very much closer. And in particular, there was a very strong Catholic influence in Hollywood. This was true for a number of reasons. Many of the filmmakers, many of the directors, men like Frank Capra and John Ford and Leo McCarey came from Catholic backgrounds, and some of them were practicing Catholics. Another factor was that in its effort to relate to the morality of mainstream America, Hollywood had to try to police itself morally, and for various reasons, Catholics proved to be very good at that. There's a priest named Father Daniel Lord who wrote a treatment of cinema morality that the production code that was used to govern Hollywood morality from 1934 until the later 1960s. And for the first 20 years of that, the production code was enforced by another Catholic, by Joseph Ignatius Breen, who has been today he's regarded as a somewhat disreputable figure. Hollywood's Censor is the name of a biography of him. But there definitely is a Catholic influence in Hollywood because of all these historical factors. And as the gospel and the culture start breaking apart in the 1950s and into the 1960s, we see that happening, and we see that reflected in Hollywood. So Hollywood becomes markedly less pious into the later 1960s and into the 1970s. We start to see depictions of bad priests and of religion as a force that is either irrelevant or just a cultural leftover in a movie like The Godfather, or sometimes even a force that can be downright malicious. That's not to say that we don't still see signs of positive depictions of religion in Hollywood, but it's not part of people's basic cultural background the way that it used to be. We have to recognize that. We have to recognize that we're living in a post-Christian culture. We are much more like the early Christians in pagan Rome than like medievals living in the height of Christendom.
Wow, this is really good stuff. I just want to say, dear listeners, in 1-800-585-9396. You're going to probably have to hurry. And if you can't stay on the line and you had to drop off, please make sure you continue the conversation on Facebook or on Twitter or on Take2show.com. We want to keep this conversation going. We're going to move to Robert, who's been waiting in Augusta, Georgia. Hi, Robert. Welcome to Take Two with Jerry and Debbie and our guest, Stephen Greydanus.
Hey, Stephen, and enjoy your articles and postings on Facebook.
Thank you, Robert.
Guys, I have a quick question. I consider myself to be a faithful Catholic, but I still enjoy certain films that might be pushing the edge on humor or raunchiness or Catholic morality, that they're entertaining. And so I'm sometimes I have a hard trouble. Deciding whether I should watch a film or not based on that. Do you have any advice for your listeners about what a good way of doing that it would be?
I've written an article about it. I've written a lot of things about this, but I would recommend that you go to my website, decentfilms.com, and check out my article, What Are the Decent Films? It explores some principles in this regard. Basically, a few points. Obviously, we live in an imperfect world and an imperfect culture, and we can't demand perfection from anything in life. If you demand perfectly pure food and perfectly pure drink and perfect friends in a perfect church, you're going to die unchurched, friendless, and quickly. So when we turn to the movies, what we're looking for is something, the same thing that we look for in our food. We're looking for something that's basically wholesome. That doesn't mean there's nothing that we could possibly object to, but just like you sit down to eat a steak and you cut off the bits of gristle and bone and you don't eat them, there are going to be some bits of a movie that you're going to want to kind of bracket and say, well, I don't agree with that. Now, if that becomes too big a part of the movie, then it becomes something that is problematic, and then that's going to be the kind of movie that you're going to want to avoid. Basically wholesome, I think, is the category that we want to look for. You also, I think, want to watch the overall balance in your media diet. There is a place for movies that are dark or for movies that have edgier elements. Pope John Paul II, in his letter to artists, says that when artists explore even the darkest corners of the human, they still give voice in a way to the desire for redemption. But we don't want to watch dark movies all the time. We don't want to make it the staple of our diet. You know, St. Paul tells us to think about the things that are good and pure and excellent. So that doesn't mean only watch Pollyanna movies or wholesome movies. But I think that we should try to make positivity the kind of the norm in our experience. So there has to be a balance also in your spirituality, in your prayer life. You know, you want to pray about what you watch and think about it, and it's an ongoing process of discernment. That's all I can say.
How's that, Robert? All right, I think we are done with Robert. We're going to get to a break here on Take Two with Jerry and Debbie. We've got Tony and Mary and Pete. We're going to try to get to all of you on the program today before we wrap things up. 1-800-585-9396 is our number. On our next broadcast, we're going to talk about pilgrimages and retreats and how really they're a holy and noble thing, and it's something we don't think about that often. I haven't taken a retreat for many, many years. Pilgrimages, retreats, getting away, spending that quiet time with the Lord. Steve Ray will be our guest on Monday here on Take Two with Jerry and Debbie.
"60 Seconds with Mother Angelica."
Sin divorces us from God until we have to pay. Some people pay for everlasting punishment because they will not ask forgiveness. And some people pay in purgatory because they never use this life to cleanse their souls. You know, I look upon every difficulty. I try. I don't always make it. But I try to make every difficulty an opportunity. Some difficulties make you humble. Some make you forgive, which makes it pleasing to God. Our dear Lord himself said on the cross, "Father, forgive them. They don't know what they do." Have you ever said that to your neighbor when you forgave them?
The people you know and trust are on EWTN.
Thanks for staying with us on Take Two with Jerry and Debbie. Our guest today is Stephen Greydanus. He's a film critic and film expert. I mean, we are learning so much today. And Stephen, we are determined to get to the next 3 calls before the end of the show. So we're going to move right away to Tony in Sioux City, Iowa. Hi, Tony. Thanks for waiting and welcome to Take Two.
Hi. Thanks for taking my call. Hey, I just wanted to take on a 1985 science fiction film called Enemy Mine.
I saw Enemy Mine a million years ago. I might have seen it in 1985, and not since. So my memory's very vague, but my impression of the themes, it seems to me to resonate with something that Roger Ebert once said about movies. He talked about movies as engines of empathy. Movies, he said, have a greater power than any other art form to enable us to empathize with, to put ourselves in the shoes of someone whose life and experiences are fundamentally different from ours. And that's what I believe Enemy Mine is about. It's set in a science fiction contest, so the enemies are a human and an alien, but in order to survive, if I'm remembering correctly, they have to get over their differences and learn to work together. And that is a profound thing. Empathy is a profound thing. St. Edith Stein did her doctoral work on empathy, and she argued that empathy is foundational not only to understanding other people, but even to understanding oneself. Because unless you can understand yourself from the outside, see yourself as you appear to other people, you don't truly know everything about yourself. So I remember Empathy Mine as at least engaging interesting themes, but I have no critically useful memories of it in terms of saying how good or bad a film it is.
Tony, do you want to respond?
Oh yeah, just really briefly. I agree with what you said too about empathy and learning about oneself. And it's a movie that on the face of it, I think some people might watch it and think, well, this is kind of cheesy. You know, the effects were typical of the mid-1980s. At the time, they were pretty solid. But, you know, I think if you really get down to the meat of the movie, the heart of what it's about, it's really about, you just look at some of the conversations that the human played by Dennis Quaid and the alien played by Louis Gossett Jr. had, at night around a campfire, talking about different eternal truths like reconciliation and things like that. There's a lot more to it than meets the eye. So yeah, I agree with what you said about that. It sounds like your memory of the movie is is still pretty intact. I mean, basically, that's what it's about. I thought it was pretty worthwhile.
All right, that's good to know. Thanks.
Tony, thanks for the call to Take Two with Jerry and Debbie. We're going to get over to Pete in Parker, Colorado. Pete, we are so grateful that you have called Take Two with Jerry and Debbie. Thank you for your call. How are things in Parker today?
Oh, they're good. The weather's good. It's warm.
Excellent. Good. What do you have for Stephen?
Well, I was wondering on the movie St. Vincent. I don't know if I read your review on it, the one with Bill Murray.
Yes.
And I was just kind of wondering, I mean, I really came away from the movie. I really enjoyed it, for a variety of reasons. And I thought it portrayed, the Catholic part, or whatever it did with Catholics in there. I thought it did fairly well. I thought it was done friendly and everything. I was wondering, what was your view of that?
I also enjoyed St. Vincent. Okay, it's not a great movie. It's a little overly some emotional shortcuts. I don't think that it takes all the consequences of people's actions as seriously as it should, but it has its heart in the right place. It is sort of a story of understanding somebody's narrative and their life history, not just judging by appearances. It's got some crude and problematic content, but I think the movie fundamentally puts it in a positive, in the proper light. It's certainly a basically positive portrayal of Catholic culture. The Catholic priests at the school where the young boy attends are fundamentally caring, likable, humorous individuals. There is no religious dimension to the film at all. We don't see the role of faith specifically. A saint is defined in the film as somebody who tries to make the world a better place for others, something like that. For a Hollywood movie that has an actual spiritual dimension, and when I say a Hollywood movie, I'm thinking of a movie that was made in the Hollywood studio system, I think you have to go to Bonnie Hunt's Return to Me in 2000, which is 15 years ago now. I can't offhand think of another one. That was a movie that had a Catholic context in which there was real faith and real spirituality. I appreciate the positive portrayal of Catholicism in St. Vincent, but it's not a genuinely religious film.
Too, yeah, I thought it was really kind of, very positive in that sense.
Yeah,
and,
it is positive, and we'll take what we can get. Portrayal of priests, anything that makes you see a figure in a Roman collar as somebody who might be a normal, decent human being, I'll take it.
All right, Pete, thanks for joining us on Take Two with Jerry and Debbie. Stephen, if I'm not mistaken, Bill Murray is I think a practicing Catholic, and he's even got a sister who's a nun. Do you know anything about that?
He has about his Catholic background in the past. The director of the film, Theodore Melfi, also is a product of New York Catholic schools, and I believe he is still practicing his faith, although I don't know at all how pious or devout he is.
Very good. Mary in Texas, we're going to go over to you next, a Guadalupe Radio Network listener. Mary, welcome to Take Two with Jerry and Debbie.
Hi, thanks for taking my call. I had a question more about a theme rather than just a movie in particular. I was folding laundry last night, and it hit me like a ton of bricks. We see so many films about depictions of the Bible and the biblical stories, but has there ever been a movie produced that is a projection about heaven and using characters from the Bible who would be present in heaven to try to depict what heaven might be like someday, just a full feature film? And do you think that would be, if there's not, do you think that would be successful or something that Hollywood could take up and really make as a film that could spark Christians, that could spark our culture to think more about the heavenly realm and to bring those characters to life in the eternal church?
Very, very few films have even dared to try to offer a transcendent vision of the afterlife. It's very easy to conjure of hell and the infernal. It's very, very difficult to offer a portrayal of heaven that comes across as anything but insipid. The imagery that the Bible uses for heaven has, if you tried to translate it to the screen, I think what most people think when they think of traditional images of heaven like we see in medieval paintings is they think that's not a place I would want to spend eternity. The movie, the Robin Williams movie, What Dreams May Come, offered I would not a Christian, but it was an interesting attempt to portray both a paradisical and an infernal vision of the afterlife, but not one with Christian saints or anything like that. In order to be successful, I think an approach like that a movie like that would have to be deeply metaphorical. It would have to take a kind of an art film approach, not attempt to portray anything that anybody would mistake as a real place. It would have to be done in some kind of symbolic way. Really gifted and inspired artists to do it. I think that the portrayal of the spiritual is better done when we leave space for the best Annunciation scene, coming full circle now and talking about Jesus films. The best Annunciation scene that I've ever seen is one where you never see Gabriel, you never hear his voice. It's the portrayal of the Annunciation in Franco Zeffirelli's Jesus of Nazareth. Olivia Hussey plays the Virgin Mary, and she is accosted by the beam of a light coming in from the window, and there's a barking dog in the distance, and St. Anne is watching in wonder as her daughter addresses a voice that no one hears but her. And that is powerful, and that is, it gives me goosebumps. But Zeffirelli didn't try to give us an angel, and I think that works better. Show us earthly realities in such a way that we know that heaven is real. Don't try to show us heaven because, as St. Paul says, no eye has seen, no ear has heard, it has not the heart of man. So you're not going to put something like that on the screen in any very compelling way, I think.
Well said, Stephen. Well said. And Mary, thank you so much for calling in from the great state of Texas and listening on Guadalupe Radio Network. Say thank you so much, Stephen Greydanus, for being with us this hour and teaching us and imparting all your wisdom to us. We do takeaways before we end the show, Stephen, and my takeaway today is I'm going right after the show to decentfilms.com, and I'm going to definitely, and I'm going to check out more of your ministry. And God bless you on your formation in the diaconate. Your takeaway, Jerry?
Well, my takeaway is, we have a lot of people who are, bridging, that the culture and our faith, and people, I think, really, really get it. Some of the people on our Facebook page said they love movies like The Exorcist and Ida, one from Poland, When the Game Stands Tall, The Mission, one of my favorite movies, I Confess, For Greater Glory. So thanks to all of you for your contributions on Facebook. Take2show.com. And Stephen, again, thanks for being with us here. It's decentfilms.com for Stephen Greydanus. Stephen, keep up the great work, and can't wait till you're a deacon. We can get your blessing at the end of the show.
Thank you so much. All
right, that's going to do it. Debbie, on Monday, Retreats and Pilgrimages with Steve Ray.
It's going to be a great show. Tune in, please. And until then, have a beautiful and blessed weekend.